Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Before we get started, a little information for you and the listeners. These are your trigger warnings. We're going to be talking about horror movies, which could involve anything from murder, rape, suicide, child abuse. For those of you in the Patreon club, you've probably already heard a few F-bombs, but for everyone else, this is your warning. There will be F-bombs and S-bombs and B-bombs and D-bombs and just all the other bombs. So if that's not something you care to listen to, you can cut out now, or you can go ahead and take a moment to think about that and come back. But if that is your thing, listen to us say all the fucked up shit and talk about really fucked up shit.
Fucked up shit.
Yes.
Fucked up shit.
Isn't it fun?
Also, if you're new here, we're going to do a little announcements section here at the start. Chris wrote a webcomic and I wrote a book. Chris's comic is about a family of cannibals secretly living on an island in New York. He's currently publishing the prequels leading up to the main story. So if you get over there now, you can get to know the characters, learn about the characters. My book was a quick reference guide to some of the tools that you learn in therapy and recovery and 12-step programs. It's originally meant as a field guide or a quick reference guide for people in recovery, but there's a lot of good stuff in there that could be useful to anybody, whether you're in recovery or not. That book is called A Guide to the Recovery Toolbox, for obvious reasons. There are links to both his webcomic and my book on our website, the Horror Makes Us Happy website. There are also links to our merch on Redbubble. We have lots of cool designs for t-shirts and stickers and stuff, so check that out. And if you want to support us on Patreon, there's a link for that too. We greatly appreciate that. Who's on the calendar next? We've got Zoe Smith from Zobo with a Shotgun, Ashley Krull, who's an FX artist on a couple different projects. We're going to be doing a change in format moving forward. We're not doing the polls on Facebook anymore so that we can use the scheduling feature of our podcast hosting company. This will allow us to give our guests firm release dates so that they can plan around those. And we'll try to work polls back into the mix once we think of some good ways to use them. But that said, Chris?
Today's guest is Barbie Wilde, actress and author, best known for her role as the female Cenobite in Hellbound, Hellraiser 2.
Also Death Wish 3.
And Death Wish 3, yes. Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me. No, thank you for letting me be on your show.
Glad to have you.
Whatever.
In this interview, we'll be asking 3 sets of questions covering childhood, teenage years, and adulthood to find out what it is about horror that you like. Coming at the same questions from multiple angles like that sometimes triggers memories that we forget about. That said, it's not meant to be a therapy session, so if there's anything that you don't want to talk about, just let us know and say pass or something like that, and we'll move on. Okay. But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
That's interesting. Okay, this is weird because I was going to start off with something completely different, but I have a very clear memory of being 4 years old, being in my mother's wonderful garden, looking at her raspberry plants with this little boy, and and then we saw a hummingbird. Now that's not something you see a lot of, especially in Canada. Right? And this kid's mouth dropped open and his chewing gum fell on the ground. And he picked it up, dusted it off, and put it back in his mouth. Now, even at that early age, my mother had given me her obsessive compulsive disorder. Like most little girls, I ran to tell on him. And I went to my mother and said, little Bobby just, fell on the ground. Oh, my God, that's so disgusting. Oh, Mom. And she said, oh, darling, that's all right. A little dirt will never hurt you. And I felt so betrayed. And she had told me dirt would hurt me. So that was horrifying. But moving right along, I had an older brother. And every Saturday, he wanted to watch the creature feature. I mean, this is, mostly black and white films from the 50s that they deemed safe enough to show in the afternoon. And I think it was Invaders from Mars, the 1953 version.
Okay.
Which is, most of my favorite horror is sci-fi horror. The little kid wakes up during a lightning storm, spaceship landing, tells his dad. Dad goes out to the cornfield, disappears into the ground, right? Comes back, he's weird. He turns around and something has been drilled into the back of his neck, right? Now, this then happens to Mom. He's trying to tell everybody that aliens are taking over his parents. And this film scared the poop out of me when I was a kid. And when my dad used to go down into the basement because it was cool down there, and he'd read his sci-fi books, and he'd come back up, and he was very
check his
tall.
neck.
I would check his neck. And I told him years later, and he said, I always wondered why you used to pull at the back of my shirt when I came up from the basement. How embarrassing is that? And then the other one, of course, was the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I looked up the dates. In 1956, I'm talking the black and white versions of these films. The parents put the alien pods, under the kid's bed, right? And all those pods in the truck and stuff. So what that made me as a young child was exceedingly paranoid. I loved my parents. I trusted my parents, but I looked under the bed for the pods every night.
Oh, of course. That's the whole thing about the pod people is, you trust them because they still look and sound like your parents. And also, that just gives another level of terror to the whole what's under the bed thing. You've got an actual direct representation in a film of, yes, there is something under the bed. It's a cabbage that's going to kill you.
Yes, exactly. So it was under the bed for the pods, in the bed for spiders, and just to make sure that there was like no boogeyman in the closet. So that was my routine every night. And because my brother was 4 years older than me, I mean, I was like 8 or 9 when all this was happening. My paranoia was blooming. But then when I was 10, Star Trek happened. I'm aging myself horribly here. My father built me this replica. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional here, of the Enterprise, and strung it between the two far posters of my, 4-poster bed. It had a little green light in the bottom. So I would go to sleep and look at the Enterprise and think, one day I'm going to become an astrophysicist and invent a spaceship and get the fuck off planet Earth and meet Captain Kirk with his perfect bum and, Mr. Spock with his fabulous intelligence. And, to me, that was like a bright, shining, hopeful moment with the whole Star Trek thing. But, I was 6 or 7. Another favorite program of my father's was The Twilight Zone by Rod Serling.
Of course.
But you see, the wonderful thing about The Twilight Zone, it had this beautiful moral core. And so bad things happened, mostly to the bad people.
Right.
And, if you tried your best and you were good, then you would be okay. I mean, it had a great moral core, The Twilight Zone. But I did Invaders from Mars, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and the other one that really freaked me out, again, the 50s version, was The Thing from Another World. My partner and I watch that movie all the time now. It's so adorable. And it's sort of like a romantic comedy, but at the Arctic with aliens, because the dialogue is so snappy. I really highly recommend it.
How have I slept on this one? Is this related to The Thing, or who goes there?
Yeah. No, it is the first version of The Thing.
Yeah.
Of course, Carpenter's Thing, now we're sort of moving ahead of ourselves, because Carpenter's Thing, I saw it as an adult. I had a nightmare about that before I even saw the movie. That's more, it actually is much more based on the original short story. But, as the journalist says at the end, watch the skies, because there could be more out there.
You never know. Yeah, it's that, again, like the Body Snatchers, it's that unknown horror of someone that looks just like everyone else.
I was so lucky, I guess. Maybe I wasn't so lucky because I had an overactive imagination, but they would let me stay up and watch. Oh, look what's on. You're 12. It's Alfred Hitchcock's new film. It's called Psycho. Let's watch it.
This will be fun.
Were your parents horror fans?
So no, not my mother was very sort of, like I said, she was a rather tender soul. She thought the whole idea of the birds was horrible. The kids getting pecked and stuff. But if it's Hitchcock, we'd be watching it when it came for it to be on television, which I think was the late 60s. And we'd watch it. We'd watch everything that, Marnie, that's another one that's kind of very strange, obsessive film. So to me, Hitchcock is the master of suspense, obviously, but he did do a couple horror movies that were excellent. But we just finished watching, we do this little thing. We watch Hitchcock, which is all about Anthony Hopkins playing Hitchcock, making Psycho and how difficult it was. He nearly was ruined financially.
I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the film is fabulous, and Helen Mirren plays Amal Ravel.
The studios didn't want to do it, so he ended up basically paying for it himself, and he used his TV production people to make a movie, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and it's brilliant. It's beautiful. It's black and white. It's so we watched Hitchcock one night, and the next night we watched Psycho, and watching it again. I mean, I watch it about every 6 months or something, because to me, I think it is kind of the perfect film about that genre. Now, do I need to go back into my childhood? Oh no.
Yes, we are still on childhood. So let's see. What were some of the other things we've covered? Influences. Did you have any friends or any fellow
horror fans
as a child?
No, brother, you mentioned.
No, just that. I didn't have very many friends. I sort of changed my personality when I moved my last year of high school. I thought, I cannot leave without high school without getting some friends. So I kind of I joined drama club, and I sort of went, I still had to get good grades. And one of my friends came up after they posted up the honor society. He said, "Barbie, I didn't know you were smart." And I went, aha. That's really sad, isn't it? I have to play.
It's almost a slightly insulting thing to say. I didn't know you were smart.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh dear. But anyway, nobody else.
I'm this nice, and I'm smart.
Yeah, but I think our family, we always felt like outsiders, really. And I think that we, my dad and my brother had this total bond with science fiction. My mother wanted me to read little girl books, but my brother was slipping me. John Carter of Mars, Carson of Venus, Moon Maiden, all the Edgar Rice Burroughs books. And then I got into the Conan books, which is like, whoa, wonderful misogynistic stuff. And lots of sci-fi. And my father was an engineer. So, I wasn't particularly scientific, but he was. And so this whole the whole science fiction thing and the horror that went with it was all part of it.
Out of curiosity, why do you think your family felt like outsiders?
I think it's, we moved and we went to a town where we didn't know that many people, and we're all really kind of quiet people, that just didn't easily make friends. I had a few friends, I did have a few friends once I got into high school and stuff. We just sort of kept ourselves to ourselves, really. I mean, I don't really remember going out. One time my father said, "Hey, let's have a cocktail party." And my mother got all zhuzhed up, and I was serving the canapes, and I was talking to this one guy, and it turns out he was a member of the John Birch Society or something. And it's like, whoa.
I know what that is, but I can't put my finger on it.
It's sort of just one step below, very, very, very right wing. I don't even want to say their names, But anyway, he was just talking about, really horrible things.
And how old were you at the time?
Oh, I must have been about 15 at this point. And
so that was more teenage.
Yeah, I think, the other thing, actually horror related, of course, for me, was that I was growing up in the early 60s. And there was this, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the film 13 Days about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I haven't seen the film, but I figured that's where you were going with that.
We were really close to being annihilated or whatever. And, I said to my dad, I've even written a short horror story called Botophobia that talks about this. Having not an air raid shelter, but a bomb shelter. Nuclear shelter. I said, let's build one. We have this huge empty yard. And my father said, there's not much point. You'd have to stay in it for 20 years. And when you came up again, the world as we know it would be gone. And everything would be probably still radioactive. So better to just die in one big, bright flash of light.
A bit dark.
Thanks,
but your
Dad.
father's a smart man. No, I 100% agree. I mean, you get into a bomb shelter, even if the bomb shelter works, if it sustains you in there, yes, you'd have to stay in there for decades. And then when you come out, what's to come out to? A bunch of ashes and, I don't know, cats with two heads.
Well,
exactly.
I mean, exactly. Nowadays, we know that wouldn't exactly be true because of what's gone on around Chernobyl. I mean, nature's bounced back quite a bit better than we expected it to. But at the time, there's a lot of people that thought, why bother?
Yeah. No, there's actually a couple really, really good Twilight Zones about this. One is, I believe, called The Shelter. And this guy, everyone makes fun of him because he's built this bomb shelter, but then something goes weird and they think aliens are attacking or something. And people are, breaking down the door of his shelter to kind of get in.
Right.
But I used to lie awake at night thinking, is a bomb going to drop on my head? I was a worried child, as you can hear.
Starting to pick up, yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't the one... What was the one with the guy he was a bank teller, but he wanted to read books?
Yes.
Wasn't that one also about nuclear?
Burgess Meredith. Yeah.
Yes,
he would lock himself in the safe every day with his little sandwich so he could read and not get bothered. And then there's I can't remember the title of it, but it's very poignant. And because I have worn glasses all my life.
Yes. It's not fair. It's just not fair.
There was time now.
Sad.
Yes.
Oh God.
So you have seen that one.
I've seen
that's right. You said you've seen the show.
Oh, we watched everyone, that and the first Outer Limits. And also, actually, I used to run home every day to watch Dark Shadows.
Nice.
But that was more sexy horror because,
Yes.
Barnabas Collins, man, I wanted him to lock me in that coffin. And he was always locking governesses in coffins, I seem to remember. And then there was, the guy who played the werewolf and all this sort of stuff. That was fun. But I think when we moved from one side of the country to the other, and I had it was my last year in high school, and my teacher, I chose Gothic literature. And I did the vampire as a term paper, did the vampire in Gothic literature. And my teacher said, Barbie, you've got a truly Gothic mind. And at 17, that really, thank you. That was just, but I loved Dracula. I read Dracula, Polydori's, Camilla, all these sort of vampire things. But Dracula was, to me, the ultimate. I thought it was brilliantly done.
When you were a child, did you participate in Halloween?
Oh God, yeah. My mother was brilliant at doing costumes. She could make costumes out of like a tablecloth or something. Nice. And she actually dressed me up as Mata Hari because I was supposed to play a historical character for one sort of thing. And she gave me she got this bolt of red satin or something and wrapped it around me like a sari, And no, we were very enthusiastic, and she would decorate the house and have a skeleton hanging and turn the lights down and, give candy to people. She really dug it.
Did you have a favorite costume?
Oh, she made me this witch costume. That was fantastic.
Pointy head, extended nose, the whole thing.
Oh, no. She didn't go that far. She wasn't a makeup artist.
What did you love about it?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It's just, I had this black skirt, but would have flowers on it. And she just turned it around and put it over my shoulders like a cape. And you wouldn't see the flowers if you're standing at somebody's door. And she had, I think she'd gotten some witch hat from somewhere, but it was just such a brilliant idea that she would use the skirt as a cape.
Right.
Very inventive. Yeah.
Yeah. She was good.
Least favorite costume?
Least favorite costume. Oh God, I don't remember. That's the only one I remember, actually.
Okay.
But we did do the whole trick or treating stuff, so I must have had them, but lost in the mists of time.
Did you enjoy the process of dressing up or putting on makeup, or what was it about it that you enjoyed?
Well, I put on makeup every day from the time I was about 10, because I always had at least one little spot, right, that I had to cover up. But so I used to sneak into my mother's bathroom and just use her makeup. But I perfected the sort of natural look. But I've always loved putting on makeup. But I appreciate makeup artists tremendously because I've never been, I'm not to that extent, that.
Did you have any really scary dreams when you were a kid?
Of course.
Any that jump out at you that you remember?
Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of people say no to that one.
The thing is, when we moved to, when we felt sort of isolated and outsiders and stuff, we were renting, and there was a locked room in the basement that we weren't supposed to get into, right?
Blackbeard.
Exactly.
Or no, Bluebeard.
And finally they moved the stuff out. I don't know if we'd bought I don't know what the thing was. But the room was empty except for a tiny Victorian baby carriage, wicker baby carriage.
Nice.
Luckily empty, right?
Yeah, right.
But it was like a toy. It wasn't a real baby carriage.
Oh, okay.
That was spooky. And all the boxes of, my dad's sci-fi books and analog and science fiction and fantasy books, and the covers of that was amazing. But so that was like, whoa. But the scariest dream I remember having is my dream was I was lying in bed, looking out the doorway of the bedroom to the hallway. And the great god Pan was there playing his flute.
Satyr, huh?
And he said, "Come and follow me." And I was so frightened I couldn't move. It was one of those sleep paralysis moments. And so I struggled. And the sleep paralysis dreams are, to me, always the worst. And it's always you're sort of where you're supposed to be, but you can't turn on the bed light or something. But I finally woke myself up. But I told a friend of mine years later about this dream, and she was a white witch. She said, "Oh, if only you'd followed him, maybe yada." But no, I recently had a dream when I just walked into the living room, and I thought, "Oh, I'm supposed to be asleep now," and somebody threw a blanket over my head. And because one of my fears is, excuse me, home invasion.
Okay.
I think that's really nasty. And, again, I've written a short story called Gaia about that. But it's great because I write horror. It's like therapy, but that's those kind of things. It's somebody in your place and they know you're here. It's not like they've broken into your flat or your apartment to steal stuff. They want you to be here so they can do stuff. That's real life horror.
Yes. Brings it close to home.
Yes. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Can I wildly change the subject for 2 seconds?
Go ahead.
Because I just remembered there are 2 films, again, that I have to mention that really made a huge impression on me. One was The Innocents with Deborah Kerr, 1961.
Okay.
Again, I saw it with my parents. Do you guys, are you familiar with this?
No.
Not that one, no.
This is one of Doug's favorite horror movies too, and it's based on the novel The Turn of the Screw, but it's a ghost story. I love ghost stories. And the other one, of course, is The Haunting. Again, that's 1963. They remade it, ghastly remake with Liam Neeson, who I adore beyond measure. But this was a real stinker, the remake. But the first one had Richard Johnson, Claire Bloom. Oh, God, I can't think of the lead actress. She was wonderful. Russ Tamblyn, who was in West Side Stories in it. It's a black and white film, but it's really got some fantastic moments. It is a classic, again, ghost story. And, they've done a TV series of it. The Haunting
of Hill House?
Yes, The Haunting of Hill House.
Based on that, okay.
Yeah, it's based on the movie, and it's real. I haven't seen the TV series because the movie is too sacred to me. But
I have never seen this movie, but that is an absolutely beautiful spiral staircase.
Yeah, oh, are you looking at pictures from it?
Yes.
It is, I think, one of the most effective ones, and there's such a shocking moment in it. It really is haunting, and it's great. I cannot more enthusiastically recommend that. And again, it's a film that I watch regularly.
We've talked a lot about these different movies that you've mentioned in shows, and some of the things that scared you. But what were some of the things that you loved about them?
I think, okay, this goes with every horror movie that I might see. I don't actually watch a lot of horror movies. Most of my viewing came, when I was younger, all this sort of stuff. Nowadays, if I'm writing horror, this is the thing I always say. The last thing I want to do is go and watch a horror movie. I want to go and see a movie with Pierce Brosnan in it, preferably I'm drinking a margarita while watching Pierce Brosnan, so it's got to be very special. The thing is, nowadays, it's hard to find horror movies that really are interesting or intelligent. Oh, that's not fair. Not necessarily the intelligence thing, but I think it's to find something that surprises me. Right? Now, I saw the remake by the Soska sisters of Rabid, Cronenberg, who I adore Cronenberg. Right? I haven't even got into David Cronenberg, another Canadian. That was wonderful because it had a feminine sort of sensibility. And I don't mean this in some kind of, a lot of guys can look at this in a negative way. It's absolutely not that way. It's the girls, I call them girls, the Soskas, they love horror, and their stuff is really freaking visceral. Visceral. If you haven't seen American Mary, do so immediately.
Love American Mary.
Oh, right. Okay. So you'll love Rabbit if you loved American Mary.
We should get Catherine Isabel on the show.
Ah, yes.
Anyway, moving on.
She's lovely. No, she's fabulous. So love that.
Hang on, I want to pause for a moment because the things that you mentioned, interesting, intelligent, surprising. I'm wondering if you were saying those things coming at them from the perspective now as maybe an author, for at least not you, but a lot of people. There's a difference. There's like a split between when you start coming at it as an auteur versus your initial impression of it as just without thinking about the work that goes into it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean.
And so I'm wondering, what were the things that you loved about it, about these things that you've mentioned, these shows and TVs? What were the things that you loved about it as a child before you started to learn about the art of it?
Well, I think, when you think most kids my age, and I'm not saying I didn't watch Gilligan's Island, but most kids my age were watching Gilligan's Island. But before that, we watched The Twilight Zone. Every night we would watch The Twilight Zone after dinner. And it was on at 7:00, I think, which is astonishing. But, it was that wonderful twist ending that he always gave. The irony. Right. This is where I learned irony, and it's, most kids my age suffered from a har irony deficiency, right? You get enormous amount of irony and intelligence and twisty tales from Rod Serling, who's one of the best writers of this stuff ever. Right. And I think that's what I look at now. I mean, I'm just trying to desperately think of a recent horror film. Oh, okay. The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Have you seen it?
Yes.
I love that film because my serial killer novel is written from the viewpoint of the serial killer. So I had to get into his head. And so I would just watch CSI up the kazoo. I've read Homicide, Practical Guide to Homicide Investigation, all this kind of stuff. Autopsy of Jane Doe was like watching CSI meets horror. It was wonderful.
It kind of was, yeah. And it was very isolated, too. Just those two people in the autopsy room, and the twist at the end was just fantastic.
There's another one of my favorites that I love is called, I'm sort of going now into more my adult choices, is Audition. It's a Japanese film.
Oh.
It starts out as this like, little romantic comedy.
Yeah, it takes a while for it to pick up, but when it does,
it's genius, absolute genius. And as in many ways, it's the same as From Dusk Till Dawn. It starts out as this sort of psychopaths on the run caper movie, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, Salma Hayek turns into a vampire. Woohoo! And
I love movies that do that.
Oh, but see, this is like, people, oh, wow, it's cross genre. You shouldn't really do that. Well, fuck you.
Right.
I love that.
You should. How about that?
Exactly. Oh, my friend said,
never let anyone should on you.
Yeah, exactly. It's bad. But I have to say that I think that, anything like that sort of, I saw a recent film. My partner didn't like it much, but it was called The Burnt Orange Heresy. And it starred the fabulous Klaus Bang. And it basically starts out like this art guy. He's in Rome, blah, 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 blah. He's authenticating paintings, and Mick Jagger turns up. My painting is this, And then you think, oh, it's kind of sweet. And then Elizabeth Debicki pops up, who was in Widows and The Night Manager, and she's gorgeous. And they start having a little thing, and they go to this fabulous villa. And then all of a sudden, it turns into this, whoa, what's going on? What are you doing, Mom? And it was this total twist at the end, which I probably spoiled for people who are interested in watching it. But he's a marvelous actor. And if you haven't seen the new Dracula, I really recommend it. Anything that has nuns, like 20 nuns with crucifixes lined up outside of this convent, daring him to come in. So the way they did it was just absolutely brilliant and quite funny and amusing and interesting. But that's it. It's to be surprised. There's so many movies where basically you got a girl wearing a boob tube, running through the forest, and a guy chasing her with a chainsaw. Those are not films that I particularly want to see.
Okay.
So
let's try teenage years. What were some of the, you mentioned 13 Days. I think was that around your teen years, or was that earlier?
Oh, no. I saw that long time. I mean, that's not a horror movie. It is. It's politics.
Right.
So, of course, when I was a student, I went to see a fair amount of films. In a funny sort of way, when I went to university, we had a cinema that was $1. And I saw A Clockwork Orange. Now, I don't know if you would consider that horror.
I would consider that, in the very least, a psychological horror.
Oh, God, yeah. It was brilliant. And I've been lucky enough to do some conventions with Malcolm McDowell, and his stories about the making of it. It's like, oh, my God. He actually nearly went blind because that thing they put to keep his eyes open and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, was probably one of the most shocking films I saw when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And because it had this very brutal rape in it at the beginning, and it's like, oh my God. Right. Well, actually, no, she manages to escape.
Yeah.
But holy kid, there's a naked person. I'd never seen anyone naked in a movie.
I think I had seen Clockwork Orange when I was 14 first, and then later on, my friends and I decided it would be a good idea to watch it on LSD, and that was a terrible idea in retrospect.
Oh no! Oh, jeez!
Why would you do that?
Again, terrible idea in retrospect. At the time, it seemed like a good idea, and then we're just 30 minutes into it, like, should we be watching?
This was a bad idea.
This is a bad idea. I must admit, seeing, I would never want to do that. I remember seeing, I was in my 20s by this point, and hey, let's go and see Alien. It sounds really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I just being utterly horrified. I actually was watching the beginning of the movie with my hands in front of my face, and my boyfriend at the time said, I paid £8 for us to see this movie.
You're going to watch this. I paid for it.
and
what scared you about it?
Well, something it took me about 4 or 5 viewings before I actually could keep my eyes open during the bit where John Hurt peers into that egg and that thing comes out.
Yeah.
It was the idea of something being on you, inside of you. When it burst out and ran off, that totally freaked me out because it was like this little snaky thing. When it grew up, I was fine.
Yeah.
You know, oh, he's a big monster now. That's cool. I've seen that since
big
I was
monster
6.
chasing people down. But yeah, the whole personal invasiveness of the face hugger. Plus, it's funny irony again. I was just thinking when he's sitting over the egg, it's that pregnant pause tension of what's going to happen. And
Yes. Yes.
It happens.
I have to confess, when I saw Aliens 2, oh, I know why I went to see it. I went up for one of the parts of the Lady Marines.
Really?
Believe it, yes.
Huh.
I went in wearing this sort of multicolored Bermuda shorts and men's jacket, but for women, fishnet tights and bright pink stilettos. The perfect outfit for Lady Marine.
Yes, yes.
And I was going up for the pilot girl. I could have played her. But they said, "Oh, you're going to have to go to boot camp and everything." I went, "Yeah, sure." But I had training in kung fu, and I'd done fencing, and I was actually very fit. And at that point,
you were overqualified for that role, then.
Probably, yes. So, but then I thought, oh, I've got to go and see it. And so I went with my friend Pascal, who was also an actress, and we were sitting there. And it's a bit where Sigourney Weaver and the little girl Newt are locked in the infirmary with a scampering facehugger. And this bit where it sort of slips down, you know, and it's right there. And there's and I screamed and knocked her handbag down. And so we're on her hand and knees, and she's trying to, you know, stuff her contents back in her handbag. And she looked at me and she said, "It's okay, Barbie. They're just bits of plastic and glue." But never for me. You know, when I go and watch a movie, I'm living the movie.
Well, yes. I mean, that's the whole point. If you just take yourself out of it and think it's just, you know, bits of latex and animatronics, then it defeats the whole purpose of watching a movie.
Exactly, which is why when people come up to me and say, "You scared me to death when I was 8 years old," and I said, "What were your parents thinking of? This has got S&M shit in it. You know, this is like
8's a little young for Hellraiser." Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I said 8 is a little young for Hellraiser. Yes.
I would have thought so. Yeah. Well, maybe you know they said 10 or something, but still, I mean, this is. You know, they had to cut out the spanking scene because they thought that was in the first Hellraiser, because they thought that was a little bit too Troy. But you know, because I hope you guys don't mind me saying this, but Americans do have a reputation for being totally embarrassed about sex.
British.
Oh yeah.
And,
we're total Brits.
The Brits are the same, you know, and my partner's Norwegian, and he goes, "Huh?" He was raised in sort of France. So it's like, what is the fuss? It's why we're all
hearing
here.
About a spanking scene in Hellraiser, to me, that just seems a little too campy. I probably would have cut that too.
Well, no, this is because they had, Julia and Frank had this S&M relationship. I mean, she really blossomed under his infernal touch.
Tutelage.
Yes, and there was just a little bit of, you know, but the American producers wouldn't go for it.
So jumping back to teenage years, what were some of, we mentioned Clockwork Orange, possibly Alien, and any others that jumped out at you as really big influential to you in your teens?
Well, I think, you know, again, this is not, I didn't
Or not even necessarily movies, you know, books qualify too.
Sure. Well, of course, Rosemary's Baby. I was 13. I think that was a little bit beyond my reading age, but of course, reading it under the covers, it was like, you know, that's pre-reading Dracula. So that made a very big impression on me. And you know, I've never seen the movie because the book bothered me so much. I would love to see it, but
what bothered you?
I don't know. Just all these people sort of manipulating her and being in this sort of, and her husband, again, the person you love and trust, is actually selling your body to the devil or whatever, so he can get a part. You know, it's just, I'll never forget it. I've only read it once, but it really, really stuck. Teenage years. So, well, again, it's sort of like, I would say the Hitchcock films.
Let me go back to Rosemary. Let me go back to Rosemary's Baby for a second and ask a different question. What did you love about it?
I'd never read anything like it. I thought it was like, you know, for someone who was just coming into their teenage years, it was actually kind of sexy in a weird way.
Okay.
And I can't remember what was sexy about it. I thought Dracula was very sexy. But this is the what is sexy to a 17-year-old, what is sexy to a 14-year-old. It's like it was disturbing, I think. But you see, this is like again something I've sort of slightly Clive was raised Catholic, I believe, and my mother was a lapsed Catholic. She married a Protestant, but she always regretted not raising us Catholic. Now that has this sort of tension of, if I'd only raised you Catholic, and what that all brings apart. Now, believe me, I will come into why I'm talking about this. It's the whole thing about erotica becomes a bit twisted. When I did go to church with my parents, I think, you sort of had to. We did the Stations of the Cross, and, oh my God, he was whipped, and this was that. And, it was all kind of really horrific.
Yep.
And that sort of makes a thing. And so I think I actually wrote a short story about my character, or the character of the female Cenobite. I called it Sister Celeste. And I based it on Gary Tunnicliffe's idea that she had been a nun in a previous life. And so all that, repressed sexuality, all of that. And then what are the Cenobites offering? Freedom.
Everything, the exact
Exploring
opposite.
sensuality.
Right.
That's what humans try and do. They want to make sense of the universe.
Yes.
And the only way some people could do it is to, using the words of the blessed George Carlin, invent an angry guy in the sky that controls everything. And he loves you, but if you don't do what he says, he's going to send you to hell so you can suffer. Yes. That doesn't sound like love to me.
Because I love you.
Yeah, because I love you. I love you, baby. But it is a interesting sort of conundrum. I don't know why. I think maybe I'd like to think my parents thought I was sensible enough not to be scared or bothered or anything of these things, that we'd all just sit there on the couch and watch.
Did they know you?
They had no idea how neurotic I really was. But, my brother would be at the end of the couch practicing his bass guitar quietly, unplugged. My dad would be falling asleep gently on the other, and my mother and I were sort of sandwiched in between, watching these movies. And but I think they thought I was sensible enough to deal with it, and if I had any problems, I would talk to them about it, which of course you never did back in those days. Mom, right. I don't want to see these scary movies anymore. But I'm glad I did.
And then they'd laugh at you and tell you to toughen up.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't do that. No, I think they'd instantly turn it off. But I think they found it interesting, so why shouldn't I? And I was, by that point, a teenager. So, I felt it much deeper, I think, than they did. For them, they just go to bed and go, Hitch is great,
I would argue, in that sense, you had more of an appreciation for it.
Absolutely. And it sort of gave me I'm still working it all out, but it gave me it certainly made my imagination.
I was just thinking how to bring the word imagination into it, but basically, something along the same lines, your lower bar for the willing suspension of disbelief. And
yes. One of my favorite lines from Basic Instinct. It must be fun making things up all the time. Yeah. They call it, you have to, it's called suspension of disbelief. Now is that a horror movie? It's got
Depends
a serial
on who
killer?
you're talking to.
It's at least suspense.
It's suspense, yeah. But no, I'm just trying to think yet again of horror films that I may have seen. I didn't like Sinister, and yet it haunted me. Is that the one with, is it Ethan Hawke?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about it haunted you?
Well, can I tell you what I hated about it first?
Sure.
Okay, you're researching this book, and you go into this house where all these people have died, and you don't tell your family, and then you think there's a home invader, and so you walk around in the dark with a baseball bat, not telling your family to wake up and go and get into the bedroom, and so you can call the police.
Yeah, right. I have to agree. I think I enjoyed the film, but that really was one of my least favorite parts of it, was the inconsideracy, if that's a word.
Oh, I like that word.
Inconsideracy, yes, claiming it. But yeah, why would you not tell the rest of your family? Why?
You know,
Because they'll be
I
upset?
felt sorry, what happened at the end, but I didn't feel sorry about him.
Nope. Did not feel sorry for him one bit.
He absolutely, but the imagery really was haunting.
Mm-hmm.
I do love films that have, are visually exciting. And of course, a couple years ago, the two films that came out was A Quiet Place.
Mm-hmm. Hang on. We're not done with this one.
We're not done with Sinister yet. Okay.
What about the imagery was haunting?
Oh God, the kids. And I just remember that sort of the lawnmower thing and the swimming
was it
pool.
Like the grainy 8mm quality of it, or just the fact that these kids were doing these horrible things?
Yeah, no, it was just great. I mean, to be honest, I haven't seen it in a few years, but it just struck me, and it did haunt me afterwards. I just wish he hadn't played such an irritating character, and I think that is a problem with a lot of, just segueing to A Quiet Place. I really cared about those people, and so it hurts when one of them gets hurt. I didn't give a shit about Ethan Hawke, although I love him as an actor, and that's the thing. So if something happens to them, so what, And it's like going through, just about to say, missed a big, big influence. Again, okay, I was in my teens, and at university, I had an anthropology class, and my anthropology teacher said, "Who wants to go and see The Exorcist?" Mm-mm. This is when it's out in the cinema. Mm-hmm. And there was about 5 of us, and we went to see it. And I'm sitting right next to him, and he's going, "This is terrible. Max von Sydow's technique at digging in Iraq is terrible. He could be destroying artifacts." I'm like, it's like sitting next to my dad when we were watching the Poseidon Adventure. This only happened in 1944 in Norway, and it's the ship turned over, but it was on the side of a fjord. It's impossible for this to happen. And I won't even tell you what he said to me when we were watching Jaws. God, that shark is so fake. But this was, but that was really fucking freaky watching The Exorcist. And I'd read the book, so I knew what was going to happen. But my favorite Exorcist film, though, has to be the third one. To me, that is just which I saw it like 20 years later. But that was
hang on.
Sorry.
So I don't want to just run down a list of your favorite movies. I'm trying to understand what it is that you loved about these things. Like, what's the common thread of, like, what triggered the emotion?
I don't know. It was just this never seen. You have to understand. This is seeing it in the cinema in the 70s. I'd never seen a film like The Exorcist before. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know exorcism existed.
It was a thing, right?
It was a thing.
Was it more like the adrenaline or the excitement of something new and scary, I guess?
I think the thing that upset me the most, 2 things, is that what happened to that little girl, her face, how it became so corrupted, and the pea soup vomit. I'm very sensitive about vomit. But one of the scariest moments, I think, is when Father Karras, oh God, I remembered his name, is looking at her, and then there's a moment when it switches to his mom being in the bed. Mm-hmm. His, mother, oh my God. And it is these, these connections of the sort of a dream state. Do you know what's dreaming? Why is he seeing his mother? No, it's a little girl. No, it is a corrupted spirit inhabiting a little girl. No, it's his, that's the thing that these are the moments that touch me and all that. And I'm being devastated when Max von Sydow has a heart attack and stuff like that. And
when you said it touched you, I mean, like, for example, if you're talking about the moment where you're looking at her and saying, what happened to that little girl? I can understand that maybe touching a part of you if you're relating to the girl. Were you relating to the priest in that moment where, he saw his mother?
Yes, because everything there, whatever is in that room is fucking them all up. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was a masterfully done film, because it would go out and they'd be outside or they'd be eating breakfast, and then the camera would go up their stairs and go to that kid's room again, and I would just feel my heart sink. I said, I don't want to go through this. Something bad is going to happen in that room, and by God, it did. I suppose the idea of watching horror, of course, is the catharsis of you get rid of all these emotions and all this kind of stuff. But I think, I don't know, that's why I have an uneasy relationship with horror, because I had so much of it in sci-fi, which was scary to me. I mean, aliens, that's pretty scary. People coming down, all this sort of stuff. But I think that's... I'm like I said, I'm very selective with my horror nowadays. I'm older, and I just want a quiet life. And getting, a jump shock or a jump scare now is, who knows what might happen. One question I really wanted to ask David Cronenberg, because we met during a Q&A at the Toronto Horrorama Festival, and we saw Maps to the Stars, which is kind of like a Hollywood horror movie, is that I want to say you often explore themes of mental illness in your movies. Is there any particular reason for that? Because that has always intrigued me as well. I think I couldn't even finish watching Spider with Ray Fiennes. I don't know if you saw Spider.
Mm-hmm. As a Cronenberg?
It's a schizophrenic, and I just thought, I can't watch this. There's certain things where I see people are fragile mentally, like the heroine of The Haunting of Hill House. She's very fragile, and I feel for them. And but sometimes it is hard to watch.
Do you find yourself relating to characters? I don't want to say too much or too easily, but trying to find how to word it. I guess easier than other people. I don't know.
Do you consider yourself a bit of an empath?
Far too much.
Mm-hmm.
I feel far too empathic toward, not only to people normally. That's why I wrote a book about a psychopath, because in a weird sort of way, how liberating to write as a man, but write as a man who doesn't really give a fuck about anybody or anything except his own twisted desires. Not that I want to do that.
No, but it's like you were talking about Max von Sydow a moment ago, and it made me think. Like, I think that's almost a quality of good writing or good filmmaking if you turn the viewer or the reader into an empath, in that your characters and story are so good that the person takes on the role of the person they're watching. Like, you can feel the terror that Max von Sydow had when the girl turned into his mother, because the story and the experience is that good that you become
exactly.
I think one of the biggest challenges in any piece of artwork, whether it's movies or books or even music, it was sort of a comment I made on a YouTube video years ago about, there was somebody saying such and such is the best guitarist in the world. And I said, at a certain point, being the best artist in any field is all you're saying is that artist is making the same choices you would have made in that same situation. And so when it comes to writing, the challenge is, how do you present a situation wherein the characters make certain choices that everybody in the world would agree with those choices? And the problem is that very people often agree with, choices, but how do you do that in a way that's creative and isn't a story that everybody's heard a million times before?
Well, the way you do it, and I think that Stephen King said something similar, is that you don't write for everybody else in the world. You only write for yourself. And you really hope that people will plug into what you're doing. Because otherwise, you'll never be happy. If you become what I call, and my partner is a composer. And all his life, he's always written from passion. I have always written from passion. I'm passionate. I read my first book about serial killers when I was about 19, I thought, Jesus, I didn't even know these people existed. Oh, except for Norman Bates, whoa, this is a thing, and I just thought, why are they like this? Why are they so different than me? And that I turned my passion into a novel, right? A journal of a serial killer. Because
but what we're talking about is the empathy that you're feeling with a character. And there are some people who can step outside of themselves, put themselves in empathy with a character and follow along with Stephen King or your work or whomever's. And there are other people who just won't. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's their problem.
Yeah.
Sucks for them.
Yeah. It's like, I can't write for everybody. If I do, I become what my partner calls a mechanic.
No, and I'm not suggesting that you do.
No, of course it's cool. But basically, I think you can either be the kind of guy who writes pastiche, or, oh, wow, it's just like blah, blah. But to try and do something totally original and take all the chances that is, because we live in the arts in a risk-adverse culture. Oh, why don't we do a film that's like Cabin in the Woods, but it's an apartment in New York City, but we can have all the same cast, that kind of thing. But this is the challenge of being an artist or a writer or a musician.
It is, yeah. You have to make the choice of, do I make money or do I do what I want?
Right.
But hopefully you'll make money by doing what you want.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of doing something different, I'm going to try something different here and ask some questions that we normally leave until the end of the interview. Okay. The next two questions, or the next few questions, are looking back over your entire life, not just any one section. But what would you say is your favorite movie?
That I was in? Or,
no, just period.
Just period.
Oh, my favorite horror movie.
No, just your favorite movie of any genre.
Any genre.
Any genre. Oh, I hate it when people ask that. I can possibly choose one.
Can't just choose. Yeah.
No. Okay. Say, what is the film that you watch the most?
No. See, that's the second question.
Oh, that's the second question. Oh, God. Oh,
okay.
Dear.
So we'll answer that one first. Yeah. What's the one that you've watched the most?
I don't know. It's terrible. We watch a lot of films over and over again because of comfort, especially now in these horrible times. Oh,
what's the first one that comes to mind?
Okay, only because I just watched a biography of Ingrid Bergman. I love Casablanca. Okay. Is it a film that I've watched? I haven't watched it recently. I love The Maltese Falcon. You see, two of my favorite writers in the world are Dashiell Hammett and the other guy, Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, because they were. It's like my favorite writers, and I know he's the sexist and all this stuff, but I love Hemingway. I love people who can get their point across in just a few brilliant words. And these three writers were brilliant and succinct. And, I love those films because you keep coming back to them. I never trust people who say, oh, my all-time favorite movie, It's like, how could you choose just one? If I had to choose just one, Psycho. Okay. Or anything by Hitch, North by Northwest. I love that. That's a perfect suspense movie.
So that's a good way of, translating that question. What's your favorite filmmaker? You can just answer with Hitchcock.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But I think basically, when I think about all the times I've watched Psycho, I probably have watched that film more than any other film.
Do you see any common threads with what kinds of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, ghost?
Psycho?
No, horror in general. Do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you like?
Well, the thing is, I more go towards films that are explore people's humanity and psychology. Because if I hadn't been an actress, my minor was archaeology, but it could have been psychology. Because I'm fascinated by what makes people tick. Always have been.
Okay,
because I've witnessed some things that it's not really apropos to whatever the word is to mention now, but how the mind works and how it can go wrong so easily. That fascinates me.
Curious. Well, we'll come back to the ghost movies thing in a second, but like, for example, in your interest in what makes people tick, why horror though? Because aren't there other genres that explore those things?
Oh, of course. And, I'm interested in seeing them too. But, it is, was sort of like, what was the first film that he did? With Bruce Willis and the little kid. I see dead people.
Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense.
I thought that was fascinating, but then you see the ending, and he's actually dead. But he thought he was alive. That's a ghost movie. It's just stuffed with ghosts, and I fell for it. My stepdaughter said, "Oh, I knew he was a ghost from the first 10 minutes." I went, "Oh,
yeah, sure,
fuck off."
Lies.
Right.
But no, it's just that's the thing because that's about the only thing that might really exist.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I've answered your question.
I think so. It sounds like the answer was spectral, otherworldly, and also psychological. It sounds like. Yes.
Yeah. Well, aliens scare the poop out of me.
Wow.
And they always have done. And when you saw that very famous film with Richard Dreyfuss, Close Encounters, and they're all like these little kids that come out, I was disappointed.
You wanted to see the aliens, huh?
Hey, where's the tall guy? It's just I've always been kind of concerned, and yet having read books like John Carter of Mars, the red-skinned inhabitants of the Barsoom, are they're just like humans, and they're perfectly nice people and all this kind of stuff. But I don't believe that necessarily aliens are, but I'm intrigued by it. And the whole sort of Roswell thing and stuff like that. I mean, of course, there is every possibility that there are, other life forms looking at us with a jaundiced eye, wondering what the hell's going on. Did you guys see a film called Life? I think it was called.
Yes, and I there were some interesting aspects of it. I'm not a fan of it because of the complete lack of science and logic in certain things. Like, let's get the flamethrower on a spaceship. Yes. What? No. What? No.
No. See, it was so irritating. I mean, what a cruel waste as well of Jake.
Oh, I know. Great cast.
And the lovely Ryan.
If you want to see a good movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, watch Enemy. That is a good
Enemy is great. Enemy is great. And there's another one where he plays a really sort of horrible.
Oh, Nightcrawler?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, he's a wonderful actor, and I love Ryan Reynolds beyond measure.
Oh, yeah.
Cruel waste of him. Yeah. But it's just you get this like little thing, and it was just like it has a. I think there was a Alien Prometheus had the same thing. It was like stupid scientists. Mm-hmm. I really hate the whole stupid scientist thing. If I had to have a pet peeve about science horror, it's the stupid scientist thing.
Yes.
But it's kind of, there's another film that I've only seen once that was true horror, and they've said it was like Hellraiser in space. Event Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. An extended cut of that is coming out soon, and I hope it has the extended hell scene, which was apparently lost several years ago.
Oh, wow. That would be interesting to see. But then again, it was just like, oh, God, I don't know if I could watch that again. I'm not like a wuss or anything, I mean, I've been in horror movies. I create the screams, Yeah. But it's, you don't want to get, the sort of waking up in the middle of the night sweating because you're reliving something.
True.
But that film was really disturbing.
Let me summarize what I feel are some of the common themes that I'm hearing throughout our call here, because I'm hearing two or three different tracks of things, and I'm trying to figure out what the common ground is among all of them. I'm hearing that you have a very high appreciation for intelligence. You have a high capacity for empathy, not only wanting to understand, but be in the shoes of someone or something other than yourself. I'm also hearing, some parts of paranoia, interest in disturbance, and fear. And I'm wondering how those things combine. with the intelligence and the empathy, and how and or why are those things combined is what I'm getting at.
I'm human, I guess.
Well, yes.
Excellent answer.
I'm just a cocktail of emotions. I don't know. It's weird because I've just suddenly realized I've left out one huge love of mine.
What's that?
Vincent Price.
Ah, yes.
And Peter Cushing.
Mm-hmm.
And Christopher Lee. Now, I'll deal with Vincent first. I'll keep it quick. Theater of Blood, Mask of the Red Death, especially Mask of the Red Death. Again, whoa, that was like, I'm very sort of apropos to now. Everyone's, partying up in the castle with Vincent while the whole polloi are scrabbling for a potato and dying of some horrible disease. That's pretty amazing. But he was brilliant. And yet my favorite film of his is Laura. I don't know. That is a film that I've watched a million times. Have you ever seen Laura?
Not ringing a bell.
Dana Andrews, Vincent Price, the beautiful Gene Tierney. And it starts with the investigation of the murder. And policemen often say they suffer from a Laura syndrome, where the policeman falls in love with the victim. And then it changes. And you wonder, who killed Laura? Oh, then there's I won't do it. You must see it. It's brilliant. But Vincent's fabulous in it. But I have to say, I think one of the first film, again, I should have mentioned this ages ago, was, of course, Dracula, the horror of Dracula, it was known, with Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. Those three actors I did want to get through to you, because that was the sort of time between adolescence and adulthood where I discovered Hammer horror and all the brilliant films that Corman made. Hold on a second. Hello? What's my favorite film? Yes. That's impossible, I've been told. He's right.
Can't narrow it down to just one.
Can't narrow it down to one. But I'm so glad I remembered Vincent and Peter, and on first name basis, of course. Christopher, because those I think Christopher Lee's Dracula is probably one of the sexiest ones.
So if we were to summarize what it is you love about horror, I'm still hearing intelligence and empathy, unless you can think of other.
Well, I think, yes, I love it. Well, I have to say that this is, as I've said before, I don't watch horror indiscriminately. So if I like a horror movie, it's got to surprise me. It's got to be smart. Maybe sexy too would be great, to have some element in it that has a bit of erotica in it.
Because and see, that, to me, that falls under empathy, because it's making you feel something.
Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah.
Okay. But, there's a lot of it's like, I think Klaus Bang's Dracula is really sexy. Why? I don't know. It's just, really draining somebody's blood is not a sexy thing. But it's also individual, isn't it? I mean, what you love about horror is probably something very different than what I like about horror.
Right.
If you, some right horror, obviously I'm working out a whole bunch of interesting shit. From my
it's cathartic in that way, isn't it?
Stories, So I think that's it. But the one thing I can say is that horror absolutely, and sci-fi absolutely shaped me when I was a little kid. Watching Twilight Zone, watching The Outer Limits, even getting into, there's some horror aspects for Star Trek and stuff. That, monsters and all these kind of things. Things that, how would you react if all you had was a phaser and some sort of creepy crawly coming at you?
No, I mean, to me, I'm still hearing intelligence and empathy. I mean,
listen, guys, I just want to let you know, I've got about 8 minutes left.
Right. We are coming
up. Is that okay? I'm so sorry. I just want to say one thing. I have totally enjoyed this wonderful, intelligent, enormously fun interview.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed having you.
Thank you for having. Yes. And that's what it's all about. It's a little different than just talking about your movies and everything. It's more a fun, titillating psychological discussion, really.
Before you go, because I know you're short on time, I don't think you pitched anything at the start of the call. Do you want to take a moment to pitch what you're currently working on now?
Sure. Okay. I've the audiobook of The Venus Complex, which has been compared to American Psycho, another one of my favorite films, is out, narrated by Doug Bradley. That's on Amazon. I'm working on a film based on a short story of mine called Blue Eyes, but that, of course, had to be put back because of the pandemic, with Chris Alexander, former editor of Fangoria.
Yeah, we just talked with him.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And of course, Dark Ditties Presents, which is currently on Amazon Prime, has got The Offer, where I feature, like I said, I'm dead at page 18, which is fine with me. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I know, it's spoiled. And the new one, Dad, is coming out soon, which is a zombie apocalypse with a difference. I'm working on a script called Zulu Zombies. I don't particularly like zombies. But I wrote a story about. Did you guys ever see Zulu, the film with Stanley Baker and Michael Caine?
No.
Okay, it's all about Rorke's Drift, which is this way station where Zulus and the British Army were fighting. And this is back in the 19th century.
I think I've read about this, though. The spirits of the Zulus get locked in this spirit bottle, and they get unleashed on London in modern day times. That I didn't read about.
So it's sort of like, oh my God, it's from Rorke's Drift to Milton Keynes, because part of it starts in Milton Keynes, which is this sort of weird, shitty, well, it's not shitty, but it's a strange town in the UK. So I'm working on that. And I'm co-writing the script with Chris for Blue Eyes. And I've got another short story that's due at the end of April, which is based on Dante's Inferno. Being published where? And for some reason, I've been given the topic of lust.
For some reason, who knows?
For some reason. So that's what's on my plate. But of course, it's very difficult. I don't know how you guys are dealing with it, but it's very hard for me to feel creative during these times. But I really need to light a little fire under my butt and get back to, because my Zulu script is nearly finished. So I really need to.
Well, for us, the creative part is the talking to people like you. So,
yes, that definitely helps.
Oh, well, it's been a, absolute delight. Do you have any more questions?
Not at the moment. I'll get with you offline to get a bio from you and link whatever links you want us to put on a bio page for you, and we'll take care of that separately.
Okay. Well, it's, like I said, it's been an absolute delight. And it's interesting sort of going through things that you suddenly realize, wow, that really made a huge impression on me at the time.
Yeah.
Walking down memory lane of horrors,
yes.
I suppose.
Ooh, that's a good subtitle.
Hey.
Use that.
No,
use that
you
for
have to pay me.
We'll use that as the subtitle for this episode.
I'm only kidding. I just hope I wasn't jumping. I am Ms. Tangent. If you just let me run away, I will.
Not the only one, no. So thank you, Barbie, for being our guest, and thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We have a list there of people we'd like to interview. If you can help us connect with any of them, or if you'd like to know somebody you'd like to have added to the list, let us know. You can hit us up on social media. Let us know how we're doing. There are links on the website. You can support us on Patreon. There's a merch page. Just in general, let us know how we're doing. horrormakesushappy.com.